Caffrey is our wonderful graphic designer who helped us create this logo and the whole logo package. We're very excited about that. So now, welcome to the 20th for adult ears only storytelling concert for adults and mature teens of 15 and above. Tonight, the Mother Lode Storytelling Guild's it's our first Zoom concert. The one big gift of these strange COVIDian times has been the chance to discover new ways to connect and stay creative. And tonight is all about that. Before the stories begin, however, we would like to recognize those who lived here long before us. The native people of California have thrived for countless generations in the areas where our storytellers live. Tonight, we offer our gratitude to California's first people, especially the Sierra Miwok, the Bay Miwok, and the Ohlone, who have held these lands and waters in delicate balance for 10,000 years. In the 21st century, we honor the awakenings of their languages, their histories, and wisdoms found in their stories. Thank you. Mukchuksus to our Miwok friends, and kwekwe o materu in my own native language to all of you. Excuse me one little tiny moment. I'll tell you now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm using some cheat sheets. Just bear with me. And so the time for stories has come. If you would like to clap, cheer, give a response, you can use that chat box throughout the program as much as you would like. The storytellers will eventually have a chance to see those. Before we got together, I asked each of the tellers to tell me something about themselves when they were 15 years old, which is our sort of minimum age for being at this program. I got some fun responses. Angie says that when she was 15 years old, she was shy, curious, and paranoid. Angie Heiss didn't start telling stories publicly until 2014, but she has been making up for lost time. She's a multiple Story Slam champion, presented a showcase at the 2016 National Storytelling Network Summer Conference, and earned a special invitation to tell for the 2019 NSN Story Slam. Angie's had a lifetime of rich experience to mold into stories. After World War II, her mother brought her to the United States, immigrants from England. She grew up in a theatrical family that loved telling tales around the kitchen table. She spent 2 years living on an island in the South Pacific, serving in the Peace Corps. And now she and her husband traveled the world to see grandkids who live abroad. Let's listen to one of her poignant, gripping, and engaging tales. Please welcome Mariposa County's own Angie Heiss.
Thank you, Beezy. And thank you all for joining us this evening. It's wonderful that you're here on a weeknight. And I have one more very quick thank you. I've never done this before publicly, but as we're growing older, I want to thank my husband, George, for supporting me and encouraging me in storytelling. I truly believe that anyone who lives with a performer is a saint. Now, let's have a story. Flight 507, 1,000,000 to 1. I've flown all over the world, to Europe, to Australia 9 times, long flights. And I mention this not to brag, but because the only time I truly believed that I would die in a plane crash was not a long flight. It was a short, simple 55-minute flight coming back from a weekend in Las Vegas, Nevada to Fresno, California. The plane was a 2-engine MD-83 jet with about 120 passengers on board that evening. This is the true story of Flight 507. Now, my husband, George, and I had been in Las Vegas just for a fun weekend, just a getaway. And we did the usual Las Vegas things, some gambling, some shows. But we left time for shopping, baby shopping, because 2 weeks before, we had become grandparents for the very first time. And we were so excited, and we waited so long for this. I mean, we were already in our 60s, but the universe was fickle. Yes, we would have grandchildren, but where would this grandchild be born and where would this grandchild grow up? Well, pick a place on the globe about as far away from California as you can get. Australia. And I remember the day that my son called to give us the news. It was 2 p.m. here. Australia was 19 hours ahead. And he said to us, Mom, Dad, your grandparents, you have a lovely baby grandson. And I said, oh, when was he born? And my son said, well, your time? Tomorrow. Now, we live in a tiny rural town without a lot of shopping. So we took advantage of being in Las Vegas to do some serious baby shopping. And when we boarded that flight at 6:10 that evening for a 6:29 takeoff, we had a huge tote bag stuffed full of baby things that we stashed overhead in the overhead bin above our seats. We were at the back of the plane in row 33, right next to the left engine on the left side of the plane. There were only 2 seats in a row there. I had the window and George had the aisle. And takeoff was uneventful. And we were relaxing and chit-chatting. And after about 15 minutes, the pilot turned off the seatbelt sign. And we'd noticed that there were 2 flight attendants on board, both female, one at the back by us and one at the front. And the one at the back walked down the aisle to assist the other with a beverage service. They'd just gotten the drink cart out of the locker. And then, all of a sudden, on the right side of the plane, just across the aisle from us, outside, the right engine, it exploded. There was a colossal bang and the plane started to shudder from left to right. And then it started to go down to the left. And I grabbed my husband and he put his arm around me and he said, sweetheart, we're together. And then it seemed to stay at a 45-degree angle. It didn't go any further. My heart was pounding, and all I could think of was a bomb. But then I thought, what self-respecting terrorists would try and make a statement with a bomb on a flight from Las Vegas to Fresno? The flight attendants at the front of the plane rushed the drink cart back into the locker. And then the flight attendant at the front lowered her oxygen and started to breathe and inhale. She was hyperventilating. The other flight attendant walked back past us, got on the phone, talked to the pilot, and then sat down in her seat, and she started to cry hysterically. Now, as passengers, we take our cues from the crew, and this crew was falling apart. So what hope was there for us? A few minutes later, the pilot came on the loudspeaker and he said, ladies and gentlemen, we have lost our right engine and we have been instructed to return to McCarran Field in Las Vegas, and we should be on the ground in 20 minutes. And I'm thinking, lost the right engine? It didn't just die quietly, it exploded. And thank God there are no flames coming out of it. And then as I sat there, I said to my husband, how are we going to fly at a 45-degree angle? We've already lost altitude. How are we going to turn? And then how are we going to land? I mean, we're going to hit on the left side and the plane's going to flip over. We'll die that way. And he just calmly said, well, we'll see, love. Those 20 minutes were the longest 20 minutes. They were sheer terror. But there was no hysterics on board. I could hear quiet sobbing, quiet talking, quiet praying. The only hysterics was coming from the flight attendant behind us. About 10 minutes into this 20-minute return, I'd noticed a young couple sitting in front of us. The husband was next to the window. The wife, if it was the wife, was next to the aisle. And she turned around and her face was pale and she'd been crying. And she said to me, how long have you been married? Now, ordinarily, if somebody on a plane, a complete stranger, had asked me a question like this, I might say, well, what makes you think we're married? But this was not the time for sarcasm. So I looked at her and I said, over 20 years, over 40 years, actually. And she looked at me and she said, she had this kind of vacant look. We've only been married 5 years. And it's the first time we've ever left our 2-year-old with my parents for a whole weekend. And they thought it was a good idea that we get away and have a fun time in Las Vegas. And now? And I said to her, you'll see 40. But I didn't believe it. She turned around and faced front. And then the pilot came on the line and he said, ladies and gentlemen, we are preparing for our descent into Las Vegas. We should be on the ground very soon. No one came to help us with that. Nobody checked our seatbelts or our tray tables. And now we were starting the descent and it was pitch black outside. And I'd been talking to that left engine throughout that 20 minutes, just whispering to it, saying, you can do it, you can do it, you can do it. And then we got closer, closer, lower, lower. I could hear the landing gear drop down. And then closer, closer, lower. And as I looked out the window, it was like every plane crash movie I had ever seen. There must have been 50 to 100 emergency vehicles lined up on the runway, on the left, on the right, with their lights flashing. There were ambulances and police cars and fire engines. And I'm thinking, this is it. And then just before the left wheels of the plane touched the tarmac, I didn't see my life flash in front of me. All I could think of was, damn it, all those baby clothes in that overhead bin, and my grandson's never going to see them, and he's never going to see us. And then we hit the tarmac and the plane wobbled, and then it steadied and it righted and it was level. And we were starting to taxi in and starting to slow down, and we were safe. We were safe. When we deplaned, we had that large tote bag with us as we walked off and into the lounge. Some passengers knelt down and kissed the carpet. One woman with her husband was put on a gurney. She was 5 months pregnant. She was going to be ambulanced away because she thought she was going through premature labor. And I noticed the young woman who'd been sitting in front of me, and I walked over to her and I tapped her on the shoulder and I said, you'll see 40 now. And we smiled. A few weeks after this, my husband and I were having dinner with a friend of ours, a cousin, and he has his own plane. And we were telling him the story of this event. And he went, wow. He said, you know, if a plane's going to blow an engine, it's when it's most stressed at takeoff or landing, not when it's reached cruising altitude and it's in the air. He said, you know, that happening is 1,000,000 to 1. And I thought to myself, Flight 507, 1,000,000 to 1. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angie. And that's the second time I've heard you tell that story, and it thrills me both times. It's such wonderful. Thank you so much. And being the daughter of a pilot, I have a special affinity for that story. Our next storyteller is Tim McCaffrey. Tim was born in the Bay Area and moved to the mountains to raise his family. His extended family also lives in this part of the Sierra, and he told me not long ago that it's really been a gift to have his family so close during these uncertain times. And I know his mom is watching right now. A singer and songwriter, Tim has been storytelling for over 10 years. His best audience has been his 3 children who are growing up way too fast. So now it's time for Tim to broaden his storytelling fan base. So, of course, we're excited to be a part of that. Tim's mother would tell us, though, that he has been telling stories since the day he could talk. Now, about that 15-year-old Tim, I told you I asked everybody about that. I asked him, and he said when he was 15, he was know nothing, know it all kind of guy. So, right now, let's hear what this know it all kind of guy has to say. And let's welcome my friend, Tim McCaffrey. Yay, Tim.
Hi, thanks for that introduction, BZ. But you put me in a spot by calling me the know-it-all. The know-nothing part was the important part. So I was in a band called the Little Fuller Band, and it feels like a lifetime ago. Only a few years ago, and on this, as when you're in a band, you start off small in a small town of 2,500 people, and you build your audience. And as you build your audience, you start playing larger places. And as you start playing larger places, larger people, more famous people start showing up that you open for or play with. And this story is about playing with two of who I considered before my heroes. And we flew into Alaska. The Little Fuller Band flew into Alaska, and we got dropped off the night before we were supposed to play the Salmon Fest, which was in Ninilchik. We had about a 3.5-hour drive from the Anchorage airport to Ninilchik, the home of the Salmon Fest. And we spent the first night in a cabin, upstairs in a cabin, and we were kind of out of sorts because we got there late at night and it was dark, and we'd never been to Alaska. And Alaska is this massive place where at night it's just vast emptiness is what it feels like. We drove down the Kenai Peninsula. When we got there in the morning to the Salmon Fest, we were greeted with open arms by Jim Stearns, who's a local promoter in this area who used to work with the Grateful Dead. So we were really excited to meet this guy who was from our part of the world, who had now moved to Alaska and started the Salmon Fest. When he brought us in, he said, "Okay, you're going to play this side stage." And we didn't care where we were playing. We were playing at a big festival in Alaska, and it was probably one of 3 that were happening that fit the genre that we were playing, the music that we played, which was folk music. It was a little rockin' for folk music, but it's folk music. String band, guitar, mandolin, upright bass, tambourine at tops for percussion. So we played the side stage, and we got this really great applause from the audience. And we were just excited about that. And we thought, all right, we're done. We're going to watch the rest of this music festival. And Jim came up to us and asked us if we wanted to play the main stage. Well, my heart started to pound because the main stage on Saturday night had these 2 bands that I had paid good money to see lots of times. And I'm not going to name the bands, but I'll call band A was the Brothers, and band B we'll call the Amphibians. And I got to, we were escorted around, we were shuttled around, and we got to go, the VIP treatment from that point on. And as we rolled in and we were setting up and we kind of got rushed into the main stage, we gathered our instruments and we got on stage and we just played our normal set. And even though there were thousands of people in front of us, we still felt like this is just the music we play. It was what we've been doing for a few years. So we were just excited that people got to hear it, sort of like today. And as we played this music and we're filled with joy, I was thinking in my head as we played our last song, I'm gonna go meet these two bands, because this is one of the reasons I do this. One reason is because I love to play music, and it's a joy to travel the world and get to play music for people all over, everywhere. And secondly is to meet these heroes of mine. So I go backstage, and as the band between me and the next band, the amphibians who are going to be going on, are about to play, we get to hang out with them in the green room. And I say green room loosely because the green room was actually a tent. And in Alaska, a tent in rainy Alaska in late July isn't much, but it was enough to keep us dry. So we sparked a conversation with the amphibians, and the lead singer and guitarist of the amphibians and I started talking back and forth and sharing stories. And I quickly noticed that all of his stories were sort of dark and filled with angst and sorrow, and being new to the music world on this level, you know, it was starting to crush these dreams. And he quickly grabbed a bottle of Jameson, and he had about 45 minutes before he went on. And, you know, he started taking sips off of this bottle of Jameson and talking to me among the other band members and taking sips off this Jameson. And within a short amount of time, that entire bottle that was full was down to nothing. And all I thought in my head as I watched this guy pretty much drink himself beyond what I would be able to even stand or be, you know, I couldn't imagine drinking that much in that short a time. He was stable and he got himself together. And he's like, well, I gotta go play music. You know, I gotta go on stage. I'll talk to you guys after. And it was almost crushing to hear this man drink that bottle of whiskey and talk about the sorrows of his music life and how he was basically alone in this world. While that was happening and while he went out and he played, we went and watched him, and they had a great show. It was an awesome show. They did great. We came backstage and they kind of ushered them off. I think they were probably going back to their hotel. And then the brothers went on stage, who are my absolute favorite to this day. And they came on. They really didn't hang out much inside the green room. They had a private room themselves. They went on stage. They had an amazing show, and they came off of the stage and went back to their green room. These guys were in suits, dressed to the nines. They sounded fabulous. And me and my fellow guitar player wanted to shake hands with the lead singer of this band. So as he came out, he had completely changed his clothes. He was just wearing a sweatshirt. He had a pair of jeans on, some white Reeboks. I'll never forget the white Reeboks. And he started walking towards us, and I waved to him, and I was like, hey, you know, I'd love to get your autograph. I'd love to get a picture with you. And he held up his finger to me and he said, just a second. And he pulled out his phone and he dialed the number, and we just stood there and watched. And as he picked up the phone, he was calling his wife, and he was letting her know that the show went well, that he'd be home in the morning. And then he asked to talk to his children. And this being day 3 now in Alaska, I hadn't called the love of my life, and I hadn't spoken to my children. And admittedly, I'd been living more like the guy from the amphibians. And he said his loves, and he said his goodbyes, and he hung up the phone, and he walked towards me and he said, what can I do for you guys? And we sat and we talked and we shared some stories and we laughed, and he put his arms around both of us, and he took his picture with us, and he signed autographs, and he gave us a couple pics as mementos. And I just thought to myself, as he walked away to get into his car to drive back to his hotel, I said, that's who I want to be. So with that, I have a song that I want to share with you if I have time. And it's called Sitting on Top of the World. And it's about being on the road and thinking it's one way and finding out it's another and finding your way back. Well, I woke up at dawn with a girl under my arm and a smile plastered on my face. She crawled out of bed, dragged a comb across her head. She was an angel the devil must have raised. Well, she's a lean along, pretty good with a song. And like a switch, she can turn me on. She's all right, says I can do no wrong. I'm sitting on top of the world. Well, things are going good, just like they should. And this music, well, it ain't half bad. I got adoring fans, some are clapping their hands. This sure ain't no flash in the pan. 'Cause there's a gang over there waving dough in the air. He said he's gonna make me a millionaire. Pretty soon I won't have a single care, just sitting on top of the world. Sitting here on top of the world, oh, as pretty as I can be. Sitting here on top of the world, don't you wish you were more like me? Don't you wish you were more like me? Boss man said, if you want to make the bread, you better take the show out on the road. So I packed up my gear and hit the frontier. I said, look out world, here I go. Now my friends, they come and go like a traveling show. I had to give up my house, my home. Sometimes I feel just so alone, sitting on top of the world. Sitting here on top of the world, well, is this how it's supposed to be? Sitting here on top of the world, are you sure you wanna be like me? Are you sure you wanna be like me? Well, that whiskey and wine, the real good time, it just keeps rolling on in. And that fortune and fame, having to play your game. I tried to catch up, but I just can't win. And I think back to the place with that girl and her face. God, I wish I could get back to that place, but my good times, they left without a trace while I was sitting on top of the world. Sitting here on top of the world, all with nothing left to do. I give up my whole dang life just to be with you. Sitting here now I'm thinking, the pretty little girl. What do I gotta do to get back to her world? 'Cause when I see her, I'm gonna give her a twirl. Then I'll be sitting on top of the world. I'll be sitting on top of the world. Ha, be sitting, yeah, on top of the world. Thank you. Thanks so much. BZ, you're muted.
Oh no, I was saying, we all want to know who those bands were, Tim, but we'll all respect your ethical approach to this story and that you kept it all on the QT. Thank you, Tim. That was just wonderful. It's always such a joy to get to hear you do your music too. And I'm excited about all that you're doing. You are a Renaissance man, the logo, the music, the stories, a delightful fellow to be around. Thank you, Tim. Our next storyteller described her 15-year-old self as an adventurer, a smoker, and curious. Cynthia Restivo came to storytelling as a young mother on the heels of a solid career as an actor, radio host, a theater arts therapist. Her storytelling career has had a steady rise and has led her to be one of the premier storytellers in California with a growing reputation on the national storytelling stage. And that was just amped up last Saturday evening when Cynthia received one of the nation's most prestigious awards for the art of storytelling, an Oracle Award from the National Storytelling Network. In addition, she recently earned her master's degree in storytelling performance. She also has 2 award-winning audio recordings, a well-reviewed children's novel. She's a full-time teacher, and she leads many workshops and art residencies. She's a busy gal, gotta tell you. So let's all enjoy her raconteur, her wit, her wisdom. Dear friends, please welcome Cynthia Restivo, my dear friend and longtime colleague, to this Zoom Spotlight.
So thinking about Bill, I wanted to tell a story from RCD. And so it's summertime. I was in Columbia just the other day and saw the blackberries were ripe and ready for the picking. I always knew my grandma loved me, not because she ever said so. She never did. She never said those words, but I knew she loved me. I saw it in her wink right after I said, "I love you, Grandma." And she said, "I'm kind of fond of you too." I felt it in her extra tight first squeeze of summer. I heard it when she was ruffling through her purse to present a pair of dimes moments before the ice cream truck. And I knew it when I tasted her food. You see, my grandma was a born cook, not just a professional cook. She was actually born in 1913, Helen Martha Cook. She could cook for 100 with as much ease as if she was just cooking for Grandpa, Sharon, and myself. And she did it in a tiny little kitchen. It was so small that you could not open the door to the refrigerator at the same time as the stove. That's how small it was. Now, we would go to visit her in Santa Barbara every summer, and we would spend a week with her, and it was always promised to eat well, nothing fancy, but good enough to fill the belly. And every morning when we woke up, we would have bacon and eggs and pancake. I mean, you know, at home we had Carnation instant breakfast. So this was a real treat. And right at the end of breakfast, she would usually say something about, "Ooh, those blackberries, ooh, they sure need a good picking." Well, Sharon and I, my sister, knew that that was our cue. We would grab a bucket and out the door we would go. We would pick and pluck and drop those blackberries in that bucket. And a short while later, we would return with a bucket half full of blackberries. My grandma would take hold of the bucket and say, "Huh, I think there are more blackberries in you than in this bucket." She saw our stains on our mouth and on our chin. Well, one summer we arrived and we woke up to the sound of sizzling bacon and the drop of the cranberry ice in the juice cups. And we went out to the dining room and we ate breakfast. And then at the end of breakfast, Grandma said it. "Oh, those blackberries, whoo, they're gonna take over the yard." Sharon and I looked at each other and smiled and jumped up, grabbed a bucket and ran to the back door. And that's when we thought we heard her say, "As many blackberries as you pick, that's how big a pie I'll bake." Sharon and I, we looked at that blackberry bush. It stretched all the way from the back door all the way to the side fence. We imagined a pie that big, but we knew Grandma could do it because she was a cook. So Sharon and I strategized. We would pick every one of those ripe blackberries and it would drop in that bucket. And most importantly, not a single blackberry would pass through our lips. So we picked and plucked and dropped those blackberries in that bucket. And it wasn't long before the bucket was full. We ran into the house, the screen door slammed, and Grandma said, "Don't slam the screen door," just as it slammed on our exit. "Sorry, Grandma." And we continued our picking and plucking. We lifted the veins and stretched our heights and our bravery into the dangerous prickly zone. It was several screen door slams later that we presented Grandma with delicious delight 2 buckets, a Tupperware container, a steel bowl, and a double-handled aluminum pot, all full of blackberries. We rocked from our heels to our toes as if to say, "You have met your match, Grandma." She just let a smile sneak across her mouth and she said, "Did you leave any blackberries on that bush?" "No." That night, the whole house smelled of blackberry pie. It filled every corner of that house. You know, not all grandmas say "I love you" with words. Some bake it in a pie. So thinking of Bill, I also think of him as a teacher. And I am going to start teaching tomorrow. Tomorrow, the kids come back. And I have cleaned my room. And as I was cleaning my room, I remembered a student that I once had. His name was Jose. He lived with his grandma, and his grandma worked in our school in the cafeteria. Now, she had spent a lifetime of cleaning up other people's messes. And it was not unusual for me to be walking down the hall and for me to see Grandma, Jose's grandma, the teacher, and Jose talking about Jose's most recent behavior. And while Jose was looking at their shoes. Or I would be walking into the office and Jose would be there filling out that reflection form about what he did, why he did it, and what he's gonna do differently. Now, when he came to my class, much of my energy was spent corralling his. I had to remind him that the stage was for walking across, not crawling under, and that playing tag and hide and go seek, oh, that's a fun game at the playground, but not so much backstage, not so much. And that although the stage was a perfect square, it was not meant to be a wrestling ring. You can tell significant theatrical training was underway. So on performance night, I gathered all the actors into the green room, which, Tim, you're right, it's never green. It's never green. And I gave them their usual pep talk, and then I placed myself right by the door so that I could ground Jose and lie, "You'll be great." During the first number, the first song, the main character, center stage, freezes. I first saw it in his feet. his feet started going back and forth, the weight, and then he went on the side of his shoes, and then he put one foot on top of the other, and he got smaller and smaller until he melted and disappeared into the set. At the end of the song, the students were looking around for the main character, and he was nowhere to be found, and they stumbled over one line and skirted by another line, and then their eyes wide looked out to the audience for me to come up and fix this. So I sprinted backstage, and Jose stopped me about halfway, and he said, "Mrs. Restivo, let me do it." And I thought, I tried to brush past him. I had no time for Jose's shenanigan, but he took hold of my arm and he said, "Mrs. Restivo, I can do it. Trust me, Mrs. Restivo." And this storyteller was at a loss for words. And I guess he took that as permission, because the next minute he is on that stage saying the lines of the main character and moving around as the main character did. Now, he didn't know all the lines, but he didn't need to, because there were others on the stage that helped him out and moved him where he was supposed to be. And when we got to the part of the play where he actually had a very little part, he comes off the stage as the main character and turns around to go back on stage as his character. And I said, "Oh, Jose, it's okay. Jamal has said that he'll take your part for tonight. He thinks he knows it." And Jose puts his hands on his hips and he says, "Mrs. Restivo, that's the part I practiced." I think the audience heard, and he was back on stage. And you know, the audience, they might have been a little confused of Jose's character, but his character, it shone bright to me. When things did not go as planned, he chose action over helplessness, risk over comfort, community over individual. And so on that day, student became teacher, and teacher became student.
Wow, wonderful story. Absolutely perfect. Thank you so much. Wow. A lot of really good stories flying around this space tonight here, zooming around this space, I guess I should say, huh? You guys just bring so much richness to this gift that we wanted to give to this audience, and I'm sure that everybody is absolutely enjoying it. We are just about ready to take a little break, but before we do, I asked both Tim and Cynthia to say a few words about Bill Roberson. Both of them knew Bill very well, particularly through the Waldorf School, and Cynthia particularly also with performing with Bill quite often. They were very, very dear friends. So Tim, could you take us down that memory lane first a little bit? Anything that you'd like to share about your reminiscences of Bill?
Yeah, I figured it appropriate for adult ears only to tell the story of one of the earliest times that I got to play music side by side with Bill, which was a huge honor. He, you know, my children grew up at the Waldorf School. He taught at the Waldorf School. He was an administrator at the Waldorf School, and his persona at the Waldorf School and as a storyteller and as a songwriter is just this wonderful, wholesome, loving, which he is, don't get me wrong, he is all of that, man. And we were sitting, playing music together one day, and with a bunch of people who were playing music, and we kind of got to a point of who's next, who wants to play the next song, and he started playing a Rolling Stone song. And I kind of sat back and was playing along with him. And it was, you can't always get what you want. And he's just belting it out. Like it was just awesome. And after he was finished, like we all thought it was great. And I leaned in and I'm all, Bill, you played Rolling Stones? And he starts laughing. He had this just full body laughter. And he goes, yeah, I play the Rolling Stones. And he kind of went, pfft, and did one of these, and he leaned into me and he said, yeah, and most people don't think I swear either. Oh, shit. And then he just laughed harder. So I just thought it was awesome, Bill.
That's
Miss
great.
you. Yeah.
That's great, because not a lot of people got to see that side of Bill. He was
Yeah, right.
protective of the kids particularly, but he was as human can be. And
For adults' ears
a
only.
lovely way to share that. Such a gift. I just want to say this real quickly. One of the things I loved about Bill is he was such a master of collecting songs and stories, particularly nursery rhymes and finger plays for children. He was the go-to guy, the encyclopedia. Amazing. And Cynthia, I hope that wasn't what you were going to say, but what would you like to tell us about Bill, Cyn?
Oh, no, yes, no, that could bear repeating many times, BZ, because he was the go-to fella. And there are some people in the audience that knew Bill. And so I wanted to just call out some things that might have you remember some of the stories that you cherish. Bill was a poet, a philosopher, a father, a husband, a brother, a son, an uncle, a cousin, a musician, a storyteller, a spoon carver, a cook, a teacher, a guide, a servant leader, a joker, a knitter, a New Yorker cartoon clipper, a parenting coach, a life coach, a whiskey drinker, a mentor, a collector of books, a collector of music, a baker, a humorist, a conversationalist. If anything, I miss the conversations, yeah. And a friend. And in Bill's style, from Old English, friend means to free, to love. And being with Bill freed me to be more truly myself, the best version of myself. Bill and I shared a love for poet philosopher John O'Donohue, who talked about approaching life with reverence. Being with Bill reinforced that approach with reverence. And if kids weren't around, with just enough sprinkling of irreverence mixed in to keep it all real. I hope that jarred or triggered triggers might not be the right word. I hope that reminded you of some of your memories of Bill.
Thank you. And in a moment, we're going to be seeing a slideshow about Bill. And Cynthia, you'll see some echoes of what you said as well in the slideshow. Just because that's who Bill was, that's who he was. Gosh, we are right there. During this intermission, we are going to be showing the slideshow that will include some of Bill's songs as well. And then if you didn't find or figure out what you want to have in your glass for our toast at the end of the show, take a moment to go grab something so that you're ready for the toast. And I think we'll be back. Our tech team really knows what time we have to be back, but I'm guessing it's probably going to be about 5 minutes or so to get up, stretch, move around a little bit, get your bubbly or your favorite summer drink in your favorite glass, and then we'll be back for a few moments together as a community, and then for the joy and the pleasure of Ruth Halpern and her stories. So enjoy a little bit of a break while you watch our dear friend Bill Roberson. Thank you.
Front step, step, side step, step, twirl around. Curl yourself up and don't make a sound. And just when you think that nobody can see, come out of your shell and go waltzing with me. One day, while walking down by the sea, wishing I was someone other than me, I happened upon him, and only by chance there was a hermit crab dancing a dance. Front step, step, side step, step, twirl around. Curl yourself up and don't make a sound. And just when you think that nobody can see, come out of your shell and go waltzing with me. I wouldn't tell a fib, and I wouldn't tell a lie, that a hermit crab looked me right in the eye. He said, "Hey buddy, don't be so blue, there's no one in the world exactly like you." Front step, step, side step, step, twirl around. Curl yourself up and don't make a sound. Just when you think that nobody can see, come out of your shell and go waltzing with me. Believe me, you make a difference to me, and thank you for walking down by the sea. Now don't just stand there like you're tied up in knots. Come a little closer and I'll teach you to waltz. Front step, step, side step, step, twirl around. Curl yourself up and don't make a sound. Just when you think that nobody can see, come out of your shell and go waltzing with me. Front step, step, side step, step, twirl around. Curl yourself up and don't make a sound. Just when you think that nobody can see, come out of your shell and go waltzing with me. Front step, step, side step, step, twirl around. Curl yourself up and don't make a sound. Just when you think that nobody can see, come out of your shell and go waltzing with me. One day, while walking down by the sea, wishing I was someone other than me, I happened upon him, and only by chance there was a hermit.
Yeah, and spotlight yours. Oh, hi everybody. I'm Dana. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Motherhood Storytelling Guild this year, along with Colleen Nunn. Thank you so much for coming to our event tonight. Thank you to our audience. Thank you to our fantastic tellers. And thank you also to our wonderful partners. The Motherhood Storytelling Guild was founded in the year 2010 by Colleen Nunn and our MC, BZ Smith. Our mission as a guild is to connect people and communities by inspiring storytellers of all ages and abilities, lifting unique voices in the art of storytelling, and building eager audiences across cultures and generations.
Thanks, Dana. Thank you all for joining us tonight. It is just such a pleasure to be hearing these wonderful stories. I'm Colleen Nunn, and it is my honor to be a co-chair of the Motherhood Storytelling Guild with Dana Gross. I want to put on your calendars, if you can all add in there, that the Motherhood Storytelling Guild's next public performance will be our Murphy's Story Slam, taking place on October 15th, Friday night. We are really keeping our fingers crossed that this can be an in-person event following all of our COVID guidelines and perhaps holding the event outdoors. And if not, Dana and I are getting so much practice tonight with our Zoom skills that I think it'll be an even better performance, just tech side wise. The Murphy Story Slam is a celebration of mostly true stories, personal experience stories, and it is a competition. The date again is October 15th, Friday night, and we'll be sending out a lot of good information as that comes up. Please keep an eye on our website, motherlodestorytelling.com. And it is a competition. There are cash prizes for the winners and there are judges. It's really a fun time. Thank you for posting the website there. Now it is also my privilege to announce the winner of our raffle this evening. The tickets for our raffle have gone to all people who have registered and donated some form of a $10 donation, $20 donation, some more, and we very much appreciate your support. All of your financial donations go towards furthering programming in the Motherhood, and also we share your contributions with our partner organizations, the Storytelling Association of California, the National Storytelling Network, and Tuolumne County Arts. So thank you for your contribution. And drum roll, please, our winner this evening is Thad Waterbury and Claire Mills. Thank you both for joining us this evening, and we are going to be reaching out to you in the next few days through your email address that you provided, and we will be connecting with you to, our raffle item to this evening is two beautiful watercolor art prints painted by our featured storyteller, Ruth Halpern, who you have the privilege of hearing in just a few minutes. And also, one of our members donated a $75 gift certificate to support the framing of these two beautiful art prints. So congratulations, Tad and Claire. And we will be getting in touch with you soon. Thank you so much. And
what a thrill. How fun is that? Thaddeus, you got it. That's wonderful. And Claire too, how fun. I already know their address, FYI. And Ruth will be mailing those to you. We're very grateful that Ruth took charge of getting the giclée prints made, and the donation for the framing was sent to Ruth so that we are able to let the package come from Ruth. So that'll be very fun. And speaking of Ruth, as we go into the next part of the program, what was she like when she was 15? Well, she says she was bold, daydreamy, and clueless. At a long ago Bay Area Storytelling Festival, I met Ruth Halpern, fresh out of college with a UC Berkeley degree in narrative form, perfect for a storyteller. I invited her to the Strawberry Music Festival to join our fledgling group of storytellers. Among them that year was our very own Bill Roberson. Ruth was bold and daydreamy, but hardly clueless. She returned for at least 3 festivals, always to the delight of those strawberry kids. Ruth has been performing and teaching storytelling internationally for 35 years at schools, libraries, festivals, for corporations and conferences. A consummate student and a wise guide. She loves discovering stories that demand to be told, tales of wisdom and mystery that take a new form with each telling. Ruth is well known for improvised stories created fresh in the moment with the help from the audience, adding their ingredients to the recipe of a brand new tale. In 1998, Ruth received a Parents' Choice Gold Award for one of the first recorded collections of Shiro tales, stories of fierce, strong girls. The LA Times called Ruth a spellbinding master who spins storytelling gold with a voice warm like honey, warm honey. Let's now all sit back and enjoy the tales of Ruth Halpern. Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you so much, Beezy. What a great introduction. I hardly know who that person is, but she sounds awesome. So I appreciate that. And it means so much to me to have Beezy as my MC because she is also my mama duck. So for those of you in the storytelling world, when you first hatch into your passion for storytelling, the first adult inspiration who you see becomes the person who you tag after forever. And for me, that's Beezy. So we always greet each other with a loud quack, quack. Now, we are all emerging from a time of darkness and isolation into a world that is new and strange and fills us with nostalgia for what we had before. So tonight I wanted to tell a story that takes those themes and embroiders them and uses them to carry us on a great journey. It is a story of a young teacher, philosopher, healer named Daniel, who was plucked from obscurity by the great Sultan himself and ordered to travel across the great sea with his pregnant wife and his vast library boxed up in crates so that he could become the royal physician to the Sultan. And Daniel, of course, obeyed this summons. He loaded his great treasures, his crusty, crumbling library into crates, and he and his wife took ship. And as they sailed across that great sea and learned to weather the waves and the storms, it was 2 weeks out that they were overtaken by another vessel, a ship with black sails and the flag of the Jolly Roger. The pirates captured everyone on board, looking for ransom, looking for treasure. When they found crates full of nothing but old papers and books, they started throwing them overboard. And Daniel wept. The pirates said, "Look at him. He's crying as if his own child had been thrown overboard. He's crazy. He's not going to bring us any treasure." And they landed at the first port they saw, and they put Daniel and his wife out on shore, which was good because her pregnancy was nearly full term and she wanted to be on solid ground. But it was bad because Daniel never recovered from the shock. And in the few days that he had after his son was born, he thought, what gift can I give when my great library is lost? What can I leave for my son? He started scribbling frantically, and he managed to write 5 pages of notes that synthesized everything that had been lost, all of the wisdom that he had gained over all those years. He put it down on paper, sealed it in a wooden box, and gave it to his wife, along with a name. He told her, "Call him Hasib. His name will be a blessing." And then, exhausted, Daniel turned his face to the wall and died, leaving his wife a stranger in a strange land with a boy to raise all on her own. And she did her very best. She worked, she grew a garden, she traded for fruit and cheese and meat. She fed her boy, she brought him up strong, but lazy. Maybe you're the parent of a teenager. I know I am. There's a certain moment when your child wakes at noon grumpy at being awakened, when you think you need a job. And that's what Hasib's mother said to him. She said, "I'll send you to any school you want. Become a healer like your father." Hasib said, she said, "A tailor. I'll get you an apprenticeship. You'll learn to sew." No. "A silversmith. You'll be rich. You'll work with the finest materials." Hasib said, "Maybe later." Until at last his mother was desperate. And it was then that 3 woodcutters who lived on the outskirts of the village happened by. They said, "Oh, we'll take your son. We'll put him to work. All he needs is an axe and a donkey of his own. We'll take him into the forest, and all 4 of us will divide whatever we earn." Like the sounds of this, some hard work, and he'll be out of the house. So she bought the donkey, she bought the axe, she sent Hasib off with the woodcut. And he learned the trade quick enough. And he learned to like the life of the woodcutters. Until one day, when they were in the deepest part of the forest, all of a sudden it got even darker, as an enormous thunderstorm closed over their heads like the lid of a pot, and the lightning began flashing, and the water fell in torrents. And they ran in every direction looking for shelter, and they found a cave halfway up a hillside. They tethered the donkeys outside, and all of them ran inside and sat in the mouth of the cave, watching the rain come down. Except for Hasib, who made his way to the very back of the cave where there's a boulder that he could rest on. And he had his axe in his hand, and he was just kind of thunk, thunk, thunking his axe handle on the floor of the cave, when all of a sudden he heard thunk, like it was hollow. He laid the axe down, and he cleared away the dirt and gravel, and he found a flat, circular door with a metal loop in the middle. And he hooked his fingers in that loop, and he pulled that door open. There, beneath the door, was a cistern, like a round well carved into the floor of the cave, full to the brim with honey. Honey, a trove of honey. He called his friends. The other woodcutters came running. They said, "This is treasure. We'll take it to the market. We'll sell it. We'll scoop out every drop of honey. Hasib, you stay here. Scoop the honey. We'll take it to the market. Come back for more." And this they did for 7 days in a row, until the level of the honey had dropped to the very bottom of the cistern. And then the woodcutters lowered Hasib down into the cistern with a rope. They said, "Scoop up the last of that honey. We'll sell it, and then we'll be back to divide the money." And so Hasib scooped with the bucket, and he got the last drops of honey, and he lifted them and passed them up. And as the woodcutters took it, one of them leaned down, grabbed hold of that door, and slammed it. leaving Hasib at the bottom of that empty well. And then they were gone. They ran out of the cave, out of the forest, back to the village, straight to Hasib's mother's house. Oh, Hasib's mother, such grief, such sorrow. We bring you the most terrible news. Your son and his donkey have been eaten by a lion. We fought, we tried to save them, but sorry. And they went on their way to the market. Now, the good part of this story is that those woodcutters felt guilty. And they came back after they had sold the honey and gave a few coins to Hasib's mother. But they did not go back for Hasib. And there sat Hasib under that heavy iron lid in absolute darkness, the kind of darkness that you may have known if you were alone during the past 15 months. A darkness not just of the eyes, but of the soul. Hasib's only friends had betrayed him. He couldn't move for what felt like years. He sat in the darkness, his fingers searching for anything to give him hope. And it was because he kept reaching around that once, out of that darkness, he felt a little tickle. And when he turned his hand and captured it, he realized that the little creature in his hand was a scorpion. And if a scorpion could get into this well, that might mean there was a way out. So he set it down in the bottom of the cistern, and sure enough, it scampered into a dark corner, and he followed with his hands, and he felt a little opening. And he began pulling the rocks away and scraping and digging with his fingers until he had made an opening big enough to squeeze through. And he found himself in the dimmest dimness in a stone tunnel. And using the walls as his guide, he felt his way down the passage, around the winding curves, down into where it was cool and damp, up to where it was dry and the air stung his nostrils. And finally, in one last plunge, the tunnel ended at a door. And above the door, there was a faint glow around the edge. He could see the door was made of iron. It had a lock of silver, and in it stood a golden key. Steve turned the key, and the door swung open on a stone chamber so large he couldn't see the ceiling, so vast that it seemed like it was filled with a shimmering silvery lake. And standing around the cave within that shimmering lake were three-legged stools, thousands of them. And then at the end that he entered by, he saw a golden throne, padded with cushions. And after being hunched in that cistern for so long, he could see nothing more inviting, and he climbed up onto the throne and fell asleep. He slept a dreamless, dark sleep, but was awoken at last by a sound like and that murmuring susurration stirred him. His eyes opened, and he saw that what he had taken for a shimmering silver lake was actually a sea of seething serpents. The entire floor was carpeted with snakes, some as big as horses, some as small as silver hairs, all twisted and tangled and winding around each other and hissing menacingly at him. And he found that he could understand that they were enraged, that he sat upon the throne of the Queen of Serpents. He, a skinny human with no scales to speak of. The snakes were tidally washing towards him when he saw one enormous serpent, the size of a great workhorse, gliding among all of the serpents towards him, and balanced on its head was a crystal tray. And balanced on the crystal tray was another serpent. She wore a golden crown, and thus he knew that he was face to face with the Queen of Serpents. Who are you? And where are you from? She asked him. And Hasib said, I don't know who I am. I don't know where I come from. And she said, tell me your story. And so Hasib told her everything I've told you. Of his birth in a strange land, of his apprenticeship to the woodcutters, of the honey and the desolation. And when it was over, the serpent waved her tail, signaling to the other serpents to bring food, to bring fruit, to bring sweets, to bring wine. And she plied Hasib with all of these feasts until he was sated. And then she said, may I tell you my story? Hasib was filled with curiosity. He was dying to hear her story. Of course, please. And so she began. She told stories from every part of her life, from a terrifying airplane ride to a trip to a rock concert on the shores of the North Arctic Sea. She told stories of being a teacher and being a student, and of how her path had led her to the foot of a royal bed in a chamber hung with gold. And she didn't know what to do there, so she hid under the bed. And she heard the sound of the king and his latest bride. He heard the king, sated, say to his new bride, tell me a story, because tomorrow you will die. He heard the young queen hesitate. She, the Queen of Serpents, peeped out from underneath the bed where she was hidden and whispered in Scheherazad's ear, tell him of Ali Baba. She fed the stories to the storyteller of all the storytellers. And so the Queen of Serpents stories wove in and out and under and through each other, and Hasib grew giddy. And at times they would stop and eat or sleep, but then the stories carried on in their twisting paths until at last there came a time, a pause, a rest. And in that silence, a new feeling woke in Hasib's heart. He missed his mother. He missed his life in the world, as captivating as it was to binge on the Queen of Serpents stories. He wanted one last time to see his old home. And the Queen of Serpents said, if you leave, it will mean my death. Hasib said, how could it mean your death? I'm devoted to you. I would do anything for you. I would never bring you harm. And the Queen of Serpents said, it will, I have seen, mean my death. There's only one way you could protect me, and that would be to promise never to go to the public baths. The public baths? The hammam? That is no loss to me. Of course I will promise. I'll never go to the public baths. Just please let me see my mother one more time. And the Queen of Serpents, who could see all of the future and all of the past, agreed to let him go. And she sent one of her serpents to lead him out through the winding passages, up to the back of the cave and out into the forest. Hasib made his way home and threw himself at his mother's feet with gratitude and joy. And the two of them embraced and celebrated. And soon word spread throughout the town. Hasib is home. Hasib is alive. Hasib is here. And the first guests to celebrate, the first guests to arrive bringing gifts, were the three woodcutters who had done him wrong so long ago. It was they who had helped his mother survive. They had brought her firewood. They had brought her food from the market. They had cared for her. And now that Hasib was back, they each bowed down and begged for his forgiveness. And Hasib forgave. And together they rejoiced. There was feasting, there was celebration, there was such joy. Hasib was a celebrity in his town. Everyone wanted to greet him. Everyone wanted to host him. And it was on the 7th day of celebrating, as he walked through the center of town, that Hasib passed the gates of the hammam. He passed the gates of the public baths, and he knew the owner. The owner knew him. Hasib, Hasib, come in. Grace me with your presence. Grace us all. Come. It would be shame for me if you won't bathe in my baths. And Hasib could not say no. He stepped inside. He shed his robes. He stepped into the warm, hot spring-fed water. And no sooner had he submerged in the public bath than two guards grabbed him by the arms and said, "This is the one. We will take him." And they took him. They dragged him out of the bath. He said, "Who, what, how, what?" And they said, "You will lead us to the one thing that can save the Sultan. The Sultan is on the edge of death, and only you know how to save him." Hasib said, "How to save him? I know nothing. I'm a woodcutter. I don't know how to save a sultan." But the soldiers said, "You have the mark." And Hasib looked down and suddenly saw emblazoned down the front of his torso the image of a serpent. Brought out by the waters of the hot spring, his connection to the Queen of Serpents was visible to everyone. And as hard as he fought and argued and denied and pled, they would hear nothing of it. They would beat him senseless. Anything it took to get him to lead them to the Queen of Serpents. And at last, he gave in. He took them into the forest, showed them the way into the cave, and following by torchlight, they made their way into the great chamber, where the Queen of Serpents was waiting. She did not resist when the soldiers grabbed the length of her body and shoved her into an iron cage and locked the door. They made Hasib carry the cage. As they marched back up through the cavern, out the back of the cave, and on the long, long journey to the palace of the Sultan. As they walked, Hasib was begging for forgiveness from the Queen of Serpents. He had no excuse. He had no voice to explain how he could have broken his promise, and the Queen of Serpents didn't care. She said, "I forgive you. It is as I foresaw." And now, she probably didn't do this. She's a serpent. "Let me tell you. Let me give you the recipe for what you must make when we reach the palace." And so as they walked through the darkness with the weight of that iron cage pulling Hasib's shoulder down, the Queen of Serpents. And when they arrived, everything came to pass as she had foretold. Hasib was greeted at the gates of the palace by the Grand Wazir, who said, come with me, you must do exactly as I say." we will chop up the Queen of Serpents, and we will boil her body in 3 containers. And sure enough, there on the great wood-fired stove, 3 small urns were already bubbling. Hasib, cringing deep inside himself, said, I must be the one to slay the serpent, as she had foretold. And so the wazir gave him a great knife, and Hasib said a prayer of gratitude and chop, chop. He chopped the Queen of Serpents into 3 parts, and he threw 1 section into each of the 3 containers. And he watched them as they rose to a boil. Now, no sooner had they reached a boil than the wazir said, this is my moment. You, Hasib, you have done enough. You will drink from the first container. It will kill you. I will drink from the second container. It will make me wise, wise beyond the knowing of any other man. And the third little vial I shall deliver to the king, and what is in this vial will be enough to save him or anyone from an illness, no matter how close to death they become. And he was just about to begin lifting the 3 containers off the fire when there was a ding, ding, ding. And it was a summons from the Sultan's chambers. The wazir said, wait here, we will deal with this in just a moment. And off he ran, just as the Queen of Serpents had foretold. Well, Hasib had been instructed. He knew just what to do. He carefully lifted the first vial off of the stove and placed it in the second position on the tray. He took the second vial and the elixir of wisdom he swallowed. And the third vial he placed on the tray in the third position. And just at that moment, the wazir came rushing back in, took the first vial, which was the second vial, but they had been switched. And he drank it. And he, so the wazir was gone. Hasib took the tray and he carried it into the Sultan. And he knelt by the side of the bed where the Sultan lay as gray and still as stone. He lifted his head, cupped it in his hand, and brought that third vial to the Sultan's lips. And no sooner than the first drop hit his lip, the Sultan's eyes blinked. The color rose in his face. He sat up. He said, you've saved me. Who are you? And where do you come from? Hasib said, I am Hasib, son of Daniel, the great healer, and I bring the wisdom of the Queen of Serpents. The Sultan said, the son of Daniel, Daniel, the great healer who was on his way to become my royal physician. You are his son? Hasib said, you know of my father? The Sultan said, I've waited for years. All these years he never came. But I never knew there was a son. What can I give you? How can I reward you for saving my life? And Hasib said, I only have one wish. If it is at all possible, please bring my mother here so that she can find out how the story of her beloved husband ends. And the Sultan, of course, snapped his fingers, ordered a ship to sail, and in no time it came back carrying Hasib's mother. And Hasib's mother was carrying a thin wooden box, which she gave to Hasib. This is your inheritance. And Hasib, when he opened the lid and he saw those 5 sheets of densely written paper, with the wisdom that he had newly acquired from the Queen of Serpents, he said, "Now I am ready. I will be the royal healer." And so it was that Hasib and his mother and the Sultan lived in great contentment ever after. Thank you, everyone. How
Wow,
lovely.
that was quite an epic, my friend. Quite an epic. We are running very short on time, my wonderful friend. And I wish that we had time for your other story that you had planned as well. But I think we're just going to have you come back another time to tell that story. I'm thrilled that we got to hear this one. I will say that. I'll say it with a little quack.
Thank you. And you can find that in the 1001 Nights. It's around number 548, I think. So look for it.
The interconnection of all those, and such a lovely story for, as you say, coming out of the darkness at these times. Thank you. And beautifully told. Yes, that's in the, yes, thank you. Wow. Well, it has been an amazing night of stories. I am absolutely stunned at all of the wonder that has, the journeys that we have been on, from near death in a plane crash to the awakening of revelation of where we are on the road not taken, where are we going to end up, to the beautiful love of a grandmother and her magic in the lives of two little girls. And as Cynthia said, the teacher who learns to be the student with the guidance of Jose. And then this magic with our friend Ruth, that I'm so glad that a lot of you had the occasion tonight to meet Ruth and to enjoy her really magical way that she tells a story. I'm thrilled. So here we are, and I'm wondering if you have your special beverage and your special glass. I'm going to reach over and get my special one. Here's my special one, because it's almost toast time. But before we have a toast, we have another special little treat that is another homage to our dear Bill. Tim is going to help us all wind down by singing a lullaby that Bill wrote in 1987 on the advent of his daughter's birth. He wrote this for Piper before she was born, and it is a lovely lullaby for all of us. And we're going to be putting the chorus up in the Zoom chat box, and Tim would like all of us to join in on the chorus, even though we will all be on mute. So we'll be singing at home, but we'll be singing together.
This song is called Midnight Bird by Bill Roberson. Way back in the hills, in the middle of spring, there's a bird who sits and he quietly sings. If you got luck and play it just right, hear it, this song in the hush of the night. Curl up, my little one, snuggle in bed. The moon is a pillow, ease down your head. The night, our blanket to wrap us around. So close your eyes and lay yourself down. The stars are twinkling, a prism of light. crickets still singing their song of the night. The moonbeams turning our world blue, while the midnight bird sings especially for you. Curl, my little one, snuggle in bed. The moon is a pillow to ease down your head. The night, our blanket to wrap us around. So close your eyes and lay yourself down. Do that again. Curl, my little one, snuggle in bed. The moon is a pillow to ease down your head. The night, our blanket to wrap us around. So close your eyes and lay yourself down. Thank you, Bill.
As we leave this special night of lovely stories, let's take each of these stories and the memories that they've evoked with us. And before we leave one another, our last song by Bill, just listen to it and enjoy it and linger as long as you would like. We hope that you will appreciate this song. Bill often said that it's not a good day if it doesn't involve some kind of singing. And so with that, please hold your glass high and join me in a toast to our tellers tonight, to our beloved Bill and his forever memory. In the words of the poet Rumi, your happy songs bring me to the scent of heaven. Please keep singing. Clink and zip.
When I was just a little boy, many years ago, we had this old beat-up guitar. Where it came from, I don't know. One of the strings was busted, and there were scratches here and there. But I'd pick it up, and I'd pluck those strings and sing songs everywhere. I'll keep on singing, sing your whole life long. If you're happy or if you're sad, you can always sing a song. Sing about the old times, sing about the new. If you keep on singing, I'll sing along with you. Well, I'd take that old beat-up guitar and I'd head on down the street. I'd sing the ballad of Davy Crockett to anyone I'd meet. I'd sing about the old gray mare, and if anyone would say, sing us another one, Billy boy, I'd sing Polly Wolly Doodle all the day. I'll keep on singing, sing your whole life long. If you're happy or if you're sad, you can always sing a song. Sing about the old times, sing about the new. If you keep on singing, I'll sing along with you. I'd sing Buffalo Gals, oh Susanna, swing low, sweet chariot too. I'd sing about the red, red robin or about that old dog Blue. I'd sing about the animal fair or when the roses bloom in spring. I'd sing about the wheels on the bus, I'd sing about any old thing. Keep on singing, sing your whole life long. If you're happy or if you're sad, you can always sing a song. Sing about the old times, sing about the new. If you keep on singing, I'll sing along with you. Well, now I've gotten older, with another old beat-up guitar. I'm still singing round the campfire, in the shower, in the car. You see, I got a bit of sound advice from an old guy named Pete. Keep on singing is what he said, and your life will be complete. Keep on singing, sing your whole life long. If you're happy or if you're sad, you can always sing a song. Sing about the old times, sing about the new. If you keep on singing, I'll sing along with you. Keep on singing, sing your whole life long. If you're happy or if you're sad, you can always sing a song. Sing about the old times, sing about the new. If you keep on singing, I'll sing along with you. Yes, if you keep on singing, I'll sing along with you.
Woohoo! We did it, boys and girls.